This morning I want to go over something in Zechariah 9. First, I want to mention that the Zechariah 9 war is the same as the Ezekiel 38 war. Because, as you notice, the sons of Japheth will be in charge of the war against Israel in the Ezekiel 38 war. You can look up the personages that are mentioned, the names of the countries you'll see the sons of Japheth mostly in the forefront, and of course Persia being there too, which incidentally is a son of Shem. And of course we read that in both wars that our Father in heaven is going to intervene on behalf of Israel. There is something in verse 8 of Zechariah 9 that we need to examine a little bit more closely. And as you read verse 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, you will see that that day is going to be a time of anguish for the fake Stinians, the ones who call themselves Palestinians, because all of the fake Stinians' helpers are going to be done away with, and they're going to be left by themselves. But verse 8, and just to get in context once again, we'll start in verse 1, the burden of the word of Jehovah in the land of Hadrach. And as we've found yesterday, that Hadrach is in the Idlib province in Syria, where in a few days the Syrians, the Russians, and the Iranians are going to go in there and try to take that land back away from the rebels, the Syrian rebels. And there's like 2.5 million to 3 million people there. And as I understand, those 2.5 to 3 million people do not want to be under the thumb of Bashar Assad. The land of Hadrach, so that's in the Idlib province. And Damascus shall be the rest thereof. In other words, what it's saying is, in Hadrach first, but this battle, this war, this conflagration that's in the land of Hadrach in Idlib is going to spread to Damascus and end there. That's how you should read it. And that's when the eyes of man and all the tribes of Israel shall see Jehovah. And you can go look up in Isaiah 17, and many people prefer to read Isaiah 17, and I say you should read both and not ignore Zechariah 9, because Zechariah 9 has more information. And I don't understand. People just follow their leader, follow the preacher. The preacher says read Isaiah 17, they read Isaiah 17. If the preacher says don't listen to the prophets don't mean anything, then the people will do anything the preacher says. And we see that Lebanon is going to be set on fire in verse 4. Let's go to verse 8 again, as I say. Now, in King James Version, it says, I will encamp about my house because of the army, because of him that passes by, and because of him that returns. And no oppressor shall pass through them, Israel, anymore, for now I have seen with my eyes. Well, let's look at Strong's Concordance and let's see, because as you know, translation from Hebrew to English is not the easiest thing in the world to do. So let's examine each word in verse 8 very carefully. Kana, to decline, to bend down, to encamp. Yep. So that is correct. The first translation is on the first word is correct. So he will encamp. What about my house? Well, that's the next word is bayith. It is 1004 in Hebrew in the Strong's Concordance, and it means a house. So he will encamp in a house or in a tent. It's a place of abode. Then it says because of the army. Now this is where it gets interesting. Because of the army. The word is matsabah. It is 4675 in the Hebrew. And it says perhaps a guard or a watch. But as we notice in this particular verse, he's speaking of himself. I will continue and point this out. The next passage, it says, because of him that passes by. Well, it doesn't say because of him. It just says, all bar. It is 5674 in the Hebrew and Strong's Concordance, and the initial meaning is alienate. Well, huh? Okay. It actually means to pass over. Either to pass over or pass through. You can go look it up in Strong's Concordance and you'll see that that's what that means. Okay. Now let's go back here. The next phrase is because of him that returns. That word is shub. 7725 in Hebrew and Strong's Concordance. The word shub means to turn back or to return. Okay. Let's look at the next phrase. And no oppressor. 5065. Nagas. To press, to drive, to oppress. All right, and we see it says, and no oppressor. The next phrase, albar again, where it says shall pass through. And where it says there anymore, for I have seen, is ra'ah, to see, 7200 in Strong's Concordance. With my eyes. That is 5869 in the Strong's Concordance in Hebrew. The word is ayin, which is an eye. Okay. So as you can see, they may have gotten the translation right, or they may not have. Here's another way to translate it, and it might be better. I will encamp about my house to watch over Jerusalem, to pass over to return. What if it means that he's going to come back to he's going to return back to the location of his house, which is Jerusalem, pass over Jerusalem, return, and no oppressor will pass through them anymore, because now I have seen with my own eye? What if it means that? If you read the rest of the chapter, that is probably the better explanation, especially when you begin in verse 14. And Jehovah shall be seen an arrow shall come out like lightning, and Jehovah Elohim shall blow the trumpet, and shall go with the whirlwinds of the south. Now, we've read in New Testament that the time of the blowing of the trumpet. Now, we also read in Revelation 10 and verse 7 that when the seventh trumpet is blown, that is when the words of the prophets are going to be fulfilled. Is that the seventh trumpet that he speaks about? Here's my point. My point is, you have all these armies now that are threatening to pass through Israel. What was once 15 ships in the Mediterranean Sea on the Russian side has now turned into 26 ships. You've got them up in the Idlib province in the land of Hadrach, ready to start their conflagration there, which will spread and find its final resting place in Damascus, which is just a short drive north of the Israeli border. It is written in verse 1 that is in those days that all mankind and all the tribes of Israel are going to see the Almighty Jehovah, our Father in heaven, whose name is holy. And you will see in verse 8 that he's going to come and camp at his house. Why? And he's going to pass over Israel. And when you read in verse 14, he will be seen passing over Israel. Why is he going to do this? So that no army will come through Jerusalem anymore. Period. So I just thought reading Zechariah chapter 9 and verse 8 a little differently, because you can, might actually provide more insight, more answers to what's happening right now. And folks, please don't forget that the holy days, the Hebrew holy days, are coming up. Now, for those who are abroad, when I say abroad, I mean cast out, I mean in a diaspora, however you say that word, I want you to remember this. Remember the holy days. Remember Rosh Hashanah. Remember Yom Kippur. Remember Sukkot. But also remember this, You cannot keep any of these holy days in the lands abroad, because it is written that it will be done, that Israel would do this, would keep these holy days in a place wherever Jehovah shall choose. Well, he chose Jerusalem. That is the place. You cannot keep it in Tucson, Arizona. You can't keep it in Salt Lake City. You can't keep it in Texas. You think you get my drift. But you can still remember it. Because these days have meanings, especially when you combine Rosh Hashanah, Day of Atonement, and Sukkot together. You have what is called the Feast of Ingathering. And you can look it up, the Feast of Ingathering, you'll find it. And those holy days together represent the ingathering of Israel from all of the locations around the world. That's the reason why this time is very, very important. So keep your eyes open and be prepared. I still think that, I could be wrong, but I still think that President Trump is going to make some sort of announcement on the first day of Sukkot, on that holy day. We shall see. Or this war might just get out of control before then. I do not know. I don't claim to know. But once again, keep your eye on Haggai 2, verses 18 through 22. And remember that the day that Jehovah our Father in heaven intervenes on behalf of Israel is the day that the foundation of the temple was first laid, which is the first day of Hanukkah.